Hello and welcome. Today we're gonna go into the Wayback Machine. Today's movie is older than me, older than my father, older even than my grandfather. We are going all the way back to 1915. Oh yeah, we are going all the way back in time to look at the cinematic milestone, Birth of a Nation. Said to be one of the greatest movies of all time, Birth of a Nation is a 3-hour silent epic directed by D.W. Griffith. It is commonly referred to as the birth of cinema aesthetic, with its innovative use of filmmaking techniques. It paved the way for film and is one of the most influential movies ever created, not to mention how much money it made in theaters. If you adjust for inflation, Birth of a Nation made $1.1 billion at the box office, making it one of the highest grossing films ever. Not to mention probably the first American blockbuster. Despite that, if I were to wager a guess, unless you're a film student, you probably haven't heard of this. How did a film so groundbreaking all but fade from public memory? I'm going to show you the poster for 5 seconds and I want you to guess. As you might have pieced together, Birth of a Nation is one of the most racist films of all time. Looking back on it, it is a wonder that this movie was even released in a post-slavery America. How does this film relate to the world of today? Does this film hold up on a filmmaking level in 2013? In this review, I'm going to answer 6 very simple questions about Birth of a Nation and its influence. Let's get started. Question number 1. Is Birth of a Nation really that racist? Yes, this film is really that racist. You know how The Lion King got some flack because of its pro-segregation and also the fact that 2 out of 3 speaking hyenas were played by black people? Well, imagine if the hyenas were white people in blackface and the group of vigilantes was the Ku Klux Klan. For those of you who do not know, the Ku Klux Klan, or KKK as most people call them, as Ku Klux Klan is a tongue twister, is a white supremacist group that volley for whites ruling over all other races. And they are the good guys in this movie. This film would never be released today. And it's a wonder that it was even released in 1915, with the NAACP forming only 6 years prior. This is the kind of racism that doesn't really exist anymore. Let me illustrate this concept with this pencil diagram. At HB, we have normal ideals. At, say, 2H, we got what I call level 1 racism, which is racial insensitivity. This usually comes in the form of racial stereotypes being used to comedic effect. This racism will probably never go away either. A good example would be the Warner Brothers cartoon, Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs.
Magic mirror on the wall, send me a prince about 6 feet tall.
Part of the infamous Censored 11, Coal Black stirred up some controversy due to its portrayal of black people. As awkward as it is to watch Coal Black today, its intentions weren't really hateful. Let's also talk about 5H pencils representing level 2 racism. I define that as the dislike, distrust, or discrimination of people of a different color. This is what people commonly think of when they think of racism. There are plenty of level 2 racisms today, but everyone hates them and probably know enough to keep their opinions to themselves. Finally, we got 9H pencils, representing level 3 racism, which society has done its very best to destroy. This is the idea that a certain race is superior to other races and has the right to rule over them because of it. These are the worldviews that led to slavery. Birth of a Nation is level 3 racist. How could it not be? It was based off of a book called The Klansman. This film has gratuitous use of blackface, glorification of the KKK, and a story that frames black people as the enemy. I want to make my point very clear. This film is really that racist. Question number 2. Does this film's racism have anything to do with the fact that it made so much money? Probably not. I think it actually has more to do with why the film didn't make more money, as it caused the film to be banned from several theaters across the nation. I think the real reason why the film did so well was how innovative it was. In 1915, film was a relatively new medium, and nobody really knew what to do with it. Basic techniques like lighting, composite shots, and even large casts were almost unheard of. But then Griffith came along and made a film that was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before at the time. It was epic, it had big crowds, it conveyed so much while saying nothing at all. This movie was the first movie to really grasp how the medium of film works. It was just the type of film that demanded to be seen. If racism played any part, it was a small part. Question number 3. What was the director's intent? I think we can safely say that if he just wanted to make money, he probably would have picked something more marketable. So, what did he think would come of this? The reestablishment of slavery? And if so, did he honestly expect that to work? Could one film really bring back what America spent a whole war getting rid of nearly 50 years before? In my opinion, I think he had more sense than that. I think his plan was twofold. First was to reach out to other level 3 racists and reestablish the KKK, which died out in 1870. That plan actually worked. But his other set of goals was probably to create more level 2 racism in this world. Whether this film set black rights back at all, and if so by how much, it's hard to say, but obviously the film didn't stop it completely, which is a fact we should all be thankful for. Question number 4. Is the fact that Birth of a Nation started film as we know it today a bad thing? Well, yes and no. It's unfortunate that the first person to really get how movies work was a racist, but I don't really think that this is a bad thing. What Birth of a Nation influenced was how films were made, not how good stories were told. The way stories were told was already established in theater and literature. Yes, it was unethical, and yes, it made a lot more money than it probably deserved, but you move on, and society has moved on. Slavery's over, the KKK has less than 10,000 members, and people hate racism. Question number 5. Aside from the racism, is Birth of a Nation really a good movie? In my opinion, not really. As influential as it was at the time, looking at it in 2013, Birth of a Nation doesn't really hold up. It's well shot and uses imagery very well, but it really suffers without dialogue. Characters aren't that interesting, the movie's way too long, and it gets really repetitive and tedious, especially at the end. Let's also talk about this film's use of blackface. Blackface isn't inherently racist, but the fact that they made no effort at all to hide it kind of is. It's literally as if they made the effort to get the shiniest paint possible. Oddly enough, the mixed race makeup, gray face, is even more unnatural looking than the black makeup. This film doesn't make the effort to make the actors look like anything other than painted white people. So, why does this film have a 100% tomato rating? Why is this considered one of the best films ever? I think the fallacy is looking only at how a product was at the time of its release, and that is a mindset I'm actually getting very sick of. Things should be judged on how well they stand the test of time, and Birth of a Nation really doesn't. It deserves its place in history, but not on the list of the greatest movies ever made. Question number 6. Is it possible for a modern audience to ignore the racism and enjoy this film on its own merits? For me, at least, no. The first half is okay, and the most racist thing in the first half was blackface, but once Abraham Lincoln got shot, things got bad, and they got bad fast. I will show you this clip to, let you know what I'm talking about.
Me? Having to share the sidewalk with them? Oh, the horror! Something needs to be done!
I'm sorry, I cannot ignore this type of thinking. The whole idea that black people would take over the, and I'm quoting here, helpless white minority the second they had the chance is just ludicrous. Martin Luther King didn't fight for racial supremacy. He fighted for racial equality. The way that this film is told really says a lot about how racist people think. They try to justify the racism by saying all races want supremacy, and KKK is just fighting for the right to be racist. It kind of reminds me of the island of Dr. Moreau. In the book, the half-human, half-animal abominations need to be ruled over by a human or they would just take over. The book is all about how the line between man and beast is thin, and how anyone can cross that line if provoked. But the reason why it was there was that it was framed as a bad thing. In Birth of a Nation, it frames racial equality as bad, and I will never be able to see past that. The way it tries to justify the racism with more racism is just appalling. Even in the context of the movie, it backfires. If all races want to rule all other races, how are quote-unquote heroes really any better than any other race? It doesn't even do much to prove that the blacks are any worse in the movie. The only thing that they say blacks really have against them in this film is 1. Black population is just as cruel to itself as it is to the white population, and 2. The black men objectify white women. This film does its very best to make that point clear, but all it really does is paint the white women badly. Seriously, what did you expect him to do? Rape you? Is avoiding that really worth death? And I know I really shouldn't make fun of this movie's effects, but they really could have made that more seamless. Well, to disprove the first point, white people kill other white people all the time. The entire first half of the film centers on the Civil War. And secondly, white men treated black women like sex dolls all the time. If there was a plantation with female slaves, odds were either the master or the master's son was raping them on a weekly basis. In both cases, the white race did it, and they did it worse. The only way you could agree with this movie is if you are that racist yourself. So if you don't wear white cones on your head in your spare time, Birth of a Nation couldn't possibly be of any use to you. The entire second half of the movie is hard to watch, but I didn't reach the point where I wanted to turn it off until this shot. Oh, you are so full of crap. Jesus does not approve! I understand that this was a different time. I understand that this wasn't considered as appalling back then as it is now, but this film was just too racist for me. All in all, Birth of a Nation has its place in the history of film, but not on the list of any film I would ever want to see again. It has done its job, and it really is for the best. This world just forgets about this movie forever. While we're leaving, just remember everybody, even though we are all so different, we are also similarity. Goodbye to all, and see you next time.